Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, Chris Wiley, Patricia Chambers,
Present.
Todd Arlen,
Present.
Brandon Crum,
Present.
Homer Knight,
Here.
and Letitia McCoy.
Here.
Alrighty. We do have a quorum. Pledge of Allegiance. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And I have a motion to approve the minutes for tonight's meeting.
Motion that the minutes be approved for tonight's meeting as is.
Okay, and second?
Second.
Mr. Crum, second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Abstention passes. Approval of the minutes, we're going to table that till next meeting. Okay. Treasurer's report, Ms. Chambers.
Good evening, I'm Pat Chambers, I'm the treasurer. And Sylvia Abernathy and I met with the banker, and we had some things we wanted to go over with y'all. First, we have a checking account with Ameris Bank at 8410 Sonoya Road, Fairburn. Mr. Cody Beam is our market manager. Our account is a public funds checking account that has no minimum balance, and after our discussion with him, his suggestion to us was maybe to move our funds into a money market, a public funds money market account where we could draw some interest on it. The interest, when I talked to him, was 0.65%. It requires a $1,000 minimum. It has 6 debit items, and anything over 6 debit items is a $10 fee. So it's something we wanted the board to consider as maybe moving it into an interest-bearing account instead of just a regular checking account. There are the reports that come out of that checking account. There's 3 people that receive them: Sylvia Abernathy, the finance department, Mr. Brian Stevens, and the chair. Y'all should all be getting copies of the bank statements from the bank. We have 2 deposits in there right now. The first one was a deposit last year from Landmark Christian School from the financing of a bond application. That was $14,555. The second deposit was from South City Partners, an apartment complex on Highway 74. The proceeds from a tax abatement And they also offered the 25% discount to frontline workers in the apartment complex. That deposit was $250,000. So the balance in there right now is $264,555. There's been an audit completed by the finance department on the account. And so the two items we want to consider is maybe transferring to a interest-bearing money market. And the other thing was about hiring an accountant for the board, for this account and for our operations. That's something we were going to maybe present to our new attorney on staff, for the bonds attorney, to see if they maybe have somebody or some suggestions for us. Have any questions?
No.
Good. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next agenda item is the KB Advisory Group.
Hi,
Hi.
good evening. Good
How are you?
I'm good. How are y'all?
I thank you.
Well,
Good. Well, thank you for your time. I know you have a couple other things on the agenda, so I really just want to take 10, 15 minutes. I've had the opportunity to meet some of you, but it's good to be before you today. Here to answer questions, but also to ask you all a few as we work on our economic development strategic plan update for the city. Obviously, the Downtown Development Authority and citywide have a big role in this, and so I really appreciate you taking the time today. I'm going to go over this pretty quickly so that I can get to most of my questions here, but just want to give you a quick introduction into the process that we've been going through now, so setting some level setting and expectations, and then really want to get to the questions here. To introduce our team, KB Advisory Group is the project lead. We are based in Atlanta, a real estate economic development firm. We also have Urban Pulse joining us, and they are really focused on the community engagement aspects, and really a strong partner here on the team. And finally, we have John Tooley from Kimley Horn, who's has regional experience in economic development and is really our strategic advisor in this. Just to give you all a quick timeline here, we really kicked off in December of the end of 23, and we're still really in our data collection and public input stage. And so this is where we really want to understand your vision, your priorities, so that as we get to more the technical analysis, the target industries, and we're really looking through making recommendations that we understand what the community's vision is as we craft those. Looking here to wrap up at the end of May, and an important aspect for you all is that task 6, when we do get to identifying those strengths and weaknesses and thinking about the target industries and the priorities for the next 5 years, we do plan on having a consensus building workshop that we haven't planned yet. So we may be reaching back out once we kind of have the answers to make sure that we have your support and that this plan can be championed. Brief overview, the Economic Development Strategic Plan is looking at the next 5 years. You all have a current plan, and so this is an update to that. We're not, living in a vacuum, and so we want to just recognize that we understand Fairburn has lots of initiatives, have had many wins, and so we're not ignoring the progress we've made, but want to really build upon that. Looking at the demographic and economics of your local economy here, the industries you've been able to attract. We know you've seen a lot of growth in the last decade, and so how can we plan for that in the future? I know your mission is really about that smart growth, and so I think that you all are vital stakeholders here. And finally, it's the built environment. It's really how the economy interacts with the built environment and the real estate markets. This is an example from a recent EDSP that was adopted in Stockbridge, and just wanted to put this up as an example. Obviously, your plan will have a look and feel of Fairburn and be community specific, but this implementation phase at the end here, it's tough to see, but each of these initiatives are organized under goals, and so we'll get to overarching goals that we would bring back to you when we do have this consensus workshop. And finally, identifying those partnerships. And in this 5-year plan, it's a timing, it's connected to funding, and it's connected to capacity. but will also identify certain initiatives and projects where the Development Authority has a role. And so that'll be important to work through with you all, as, don't want to volunteer or voluntold a Development Authority to an initiative that they don't support. This, I believe you have, I think I saw some flyers here, but just to let you all know, we've done our business luncheon last week, and we did a community stakeholder meeting last night. So we've done both of those community meetings, but our surveys are still live. So if you do have folks or certain people in the community, we do encourage you to share those. We're still taking input via these surveys, as well as one-on-one interviews as needed. We, maintain some flexibility, even though we're planners. I think it's important to meet communities where they are. So just to keep that in mind when I plant that seed. I'm going to skip ahead here before I get into that. So these were the target industries that were identified in the past plan. Would love to maybe start here as some initial feedback. Do you believe that there's any of these that you do not want to see go? Has there been space that you've made in achieving these? Just general feedback based on that, because again, these new target industries, whether we keep some of these or not, will be the economic development priorities moving forward. And so just initial feedback on your thoughts here, if you feel like sharing those. Sure. Mr. Knight?
Thank you. Health and wellness, that's a need. So,
Okay.
for the film and entertainment, sports, that develop a lot of traffic. So I need to know a little bit more about the traffic study before I can give an opinion on that.
Yeah, our initial thoughts, I think putting all of your eggs into the film can be tough for a smaller city, and so I do believe there's an entertainment aspect to economic development here, but given the landscape of the film industry in recent years, I think it's a tougher thing to bite onto and would take a lot of resources. Not that it's not possible, but maybe it's not the target. What about sports tourism? Do you see that opportunity remaining in Fairburn from your point of view and the work that you all have been doing?
I think you need a pretty large asset base to build studios and things of that nature. But, I'm not ruling it out. I'm just saying, I don't know if we're
of course. Yeah.
prepared for that.
Thank you. Well, that kind of helps just to get, baseline reactions here. This isn't something we're working on. This isn't the way we're moving. And so I would like to know, what are your priorities now? Making sure that we're taking this planning process into account with your own priorities and things you're working on. So if you have anything that's you all are working on, whether that's development in downtown or citywide, that we should know about and catalog as we get through to the ultimate implementation plan.
I know that we're working on the commercial strip on 74, and we're trying to prioritize, I guess, Hudson Plaza and that development in there. I would say, and I've been personally, I've been thinking about this question for a long time. I don't really personally have, things that I'd like to see in Fairburn in the next 5 years. I think that vision, and this is, again, just personal, I think that vision is cast by the mayor and council.
Okay.
So in the whole way that this thing is organized, I kind of see it as our mission to support, whatever the political leadership is promising to our residents, and then find a way to make it happen.
Got it, understood. On that, so go ahead, Mr. Knight.
Yeah, along with those thoughts too, think about what the city needs. I'm not in professional doing that. I'm in business to see does it work with the city, and is this going to meet our needs for the citizen of the city. We talked about senior citizen homes. I think that is a need for the city, like we got it right there by the police department. Recreation activities for the young people, and we're working on those problems. So what's on the slate now, I think if we can accomplish what we have lined up before we throw some big stuff out there, you know, the city needs to see some movement and the things that we have talked about. So we got some things taking place, but nothing that you can put your eyes on really, other than on 74 is there. So the downtown area need to start accomplishing what we have planned to do, and get it done, and get that movement. Then you get the city behind what we're doing.
Perfect. I do think momentum is particularly important for development authorities across this region. I think once you start to see that demonstration, you do have the momentum. How, I know you do have two authority entities. How do you all, thinking of a capacity, as we, you know, when we draw up our implementation, thinking about what do we task with a downtown development authority versus a citywide authority? How do you all organize yourselves amongst those priorities? Or is it one and the same? Like,
In the past, it's been one and the same, and we've kind of handled it under the same, you know, umbrella. But I think as we begin to complete work on downtown, then we will have to eventually separate them and each have its own separate focus.
okay, so would it be worthwhile in our plan to identify downtown versus citywide initiatives if we're identifying partners for these initiatives? Should we keep it as one?
I don't know if we've gotten that far in our
Okay.
thinking yet. I think they probably would remain, you know, under the same umbrella until such point that they can't. You know?
Okay, that's good feedback.
And then I think the partnership is a good thing. For example, if you go downtown now, you got the city trying to move forward, but you got certain buildings standing still. Still boarded, got boarded. It doesn't have a good appearance. So if you're moving new type facilities, improving in certain facility, and you got something boarded up, that's all you see is the boarded up. You don't see the other stuff. So that partnership need to work with everybody downtown on 29. They need to be brought into the picture and understand the improvement that's going on. Plaza, you know, got to state some guidelines, some rules, regulations to get the owner to improve that, because you don't care. You see, you don't care by the facility. So if you don't move those sources, you're still going to have a city that does not look up to date.
Yeah, and the general perception, especially in the heart of your downtown. We've heard that many times, so I think that's definitely on our radar as an obstacle that you all are actively trying to get through here.
Right. Yeah, if it looks good, people will come. You know what I mean? But then we have to, you know, generate the resources to make people want to come by, you know, the programs that we have in place now to kind of update the exterior of some of the businesses. I think we ought to make a big deal out of the first 5. We ought to make a big deal out of that first 5 so that other people will look and say, okay, you know, that's something that I want to participate in. Because you know what, and I've seen this in other cities too, if you have success and you don't blow your own horn, you know what I mean? People are going to go, you know, well, what are they doing over there? And we could be world beaters, and the best world beaters that nobody's ever heard of.
Do you think that, you know, part of when we get to implementation and it's policy, it's a little bit higher level thinking of it, internal versus external. Internally, do you believe you all would benefit from marketing specifically on economic development to tell your story. In that way, when, you know, Sylvia and her team go out from an economic development point of view, and you all are obviously in the community and working to achieve your vision, is that something you think would be a resource that you need?
Well, you know, when you send people out, you can't send them out empty-handed. You know, of course, I've been on the other side. They've really got to have something in their toolbox that people want, okay? And usually it's money, generally, or assistance with moving into the area. There's a lot of barriers to coming into a new town, but the more tools that we can equip them with, and I think that's where we work hand in hand with like the city administration on ferreting out grant opportunities at the state and federal level and things that we can do to make an attractive toolbox for Ms. Abernathy and her folks to go out and spread the good word.
I'm gonna say this, as one of the newer businesses here in Fairburn, I think the city did an excellent job as we were thinking about expanding into this market. We're a law firm from Alabama, at the city officials really being detail-oriented about what the city is doing currently and what it plans to do in the future. And I think Fairburn is uniquely postured as to both proximation from the city of Atlanta, proximation from the airport, I think to tell a very unique story, both from a community standpoint, but also from an economic development and business standpoint. I think there's a lot of pieces, a lot of opportunity for collaboration with the local airports, collaboration with other cities in South Fulton, because I think if you go north of Atlanta, a lot of that land has been developed. As you come south, there's a lot of opportunity for growth and development in terms of from big developers or small developers. I think as Mr. Knight stated about the downtown area in particular, I think Sylvia's team has been specifically focused on trying to make the right upgrades to the downtown Fairburn area, because you come through, you come to Oz Pizza on a Friday night with your family, you want to go to a plaza and maybe shop or do some other things as well that's not there yet. I think the vision is to build those things so that this can be a more community-oriented space, and they're doing things like the is it Third Fridays, and just different things to bring the community together that I think is awesome. I've been to a lot of cities over the United States, and I think Fairburn has done a very good job at trying to bring the citizens together more and more. And I think to the chairman's point, keeping the DDA and DA together in terms of how we envision the city helps with uniformity, to make sure, like 74 isn't growing, but downtown isn't,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, and we've worked across smaller cities within the region, and I think we've seen different models and organizational structures, and it can get tough when you have two different development authority voices there. So I think you're right on with that. We talked about tools a little bit, and just kind of as a background and thinking about our recommendations, we wouldn't want to recommend anything that would not be in your own your appetite. And so I'm interested in, would you have an appetite for thinking about a tax allocation district or thinking about a community improvement district effort within the city?
Personally, again, I think a tax allocation district is probably the way to go, because we're just really starting this effort now. And I think that's a way to finance the vision.
Yeah. It does take the funds behind it to get these things done, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I think tax allocation is an excellent idea.
Something to explore.
And with tax allocation, you can attract more businesses. some business is good, but it's not gonna fit in Fairburn. You know, we have to look at the type of business we bringing in.
Right.
And
Match
we have,
that.
yeah, and we have to keep the young people and the elderly in mind. And keeping Fairburn downtown open longer, you gotta have something to bring the crowds in. And that partnership gotta know that they're gonna be financially supported. That's why bringing them along, how they can make money, you know, longer, because everything's about making money is there. They're not gonna stay open and ain't nobody shopping. But if the crowd is coming there for other activities, then you got the shoppers and everything that's taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm glad to hear that. I think that, you know, as a development authority and one that clearly has a pretty good relationship going on that I love to see. I really appreciate that. And there may be some other tools in the toolbox that aren't there today that you may see recommended. So just wanted to kind of float that one to get initial reactions. We may have some questions down the line and may want to reach back out to you. So if that's all right with you.
Absolutely.
Good. We'll definitely talk again as we get closer to finalizing, but I don't want to take up too much more time. But really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next agenda item is the presentation by Georgia Cities regarding the revolving loan program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me tonight. Thank you for Sylvia for inviting me. I was supposed to come last month. I had a family emergency, so thank you for your patience. Although she didn't tell me I was going to get fried catfish, or I would have made it even a bigger attempt to get here. I provided a few handouts. I would have brought more for the audience. We're in the process of printing a new updated version of this. So this one's a few years old, but it'll give you some very basic information about our revolving loan fund program. Before I get into too much detail, I wanted to give a very brief history of our program so that you'll understand why the program exists in the way that it does. So the Georgia Cities Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It was originally created in 1999 as a subsidiary of GMA, or Georgia Municipal Association, with the intent to help GMA's member cities with their downtown revitalization. We started a revolving loan fund program a few years later with the intent of helping your revitalization efforts, primarily by helping to finance private investment in your downtowns. Over the years, the program has grown. We have found other opportunities for funding. We are also a community development financial institution, or CDFI lender, which, unless there's any bankers in the room, won't mean much to most folks. But that gives us opportunities to tap into other financial resources from time to time, including right now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a second program while I'm here with you this evening. But when I talk about the revolving loan fund program, I always mention that there are really two programs that exist in the state that, to use the language from our previous presentation, tools for y'all's downtown revitalization efforts. So when we created this revolving loan fund program, it was created simultaneously with another revolving loan fund program at the state that's managed by the State Department of Community Affairs. Both of our programs are statewide. We can work in any downtown in Georgia the state can work in almost any downtown. They limit their participation to cities with a municipal population under 100,000. So there's a handful of larger cities in the state that cannot utilize DCA's program. But for y'all in most cities, there's 2 programs that are available. So I'll just sort of tell you how those work, and then before I'm done, I'll very briefly go over a high level of how the 2 programs are different. Both programs are designed to provide subordinated lending, gap financing, mezzanine lending, whatever you want to call it. Easiest way to think about it is like a second mortgage. The majority of our projects that we're involved in include the acquisition of a building, or maybe the borrower already owns a building and wants to do further improvements to it. Occasionally, they're a tenant in a building, and we can get into more details if y'all have any questions. I should mention, anybody has any questions as we go, just stop and ask. And the improvements to the building and the build out into whatever its intended use is. Both programs are designed around a 50-40-10 model, ideally, which means 50% of the project debt would be financed by a bank in a first lien position, 40% by us, meaning Georgia City's and or DCA, I should say. We can combine those 2 loan programs, and 10% equity from the borrower. We have as many projects in our history that didn't meet that 50-40-10 model as ones that did. The primary reason they didn't fit that model exactly is because we currently have a maximum loan amount of $200,000. The state has $250,000. So if someone has a $2 million project, we can't do 40%. We do want the borrowers to have at least 10% skin in the game, and we want the bank to have more at risk than us because they're automatically going to have a first lien position because they're a bank. But let's say we're looking at a $500,000 investment project that includes, maybe an acquisition of a small building and some rehab cost. That scenario would be a $250,000 loan from a bank in a first lien position, $200,000 loan from us in a second lien position, and then 10% equity. So by combining our resources with the bank, they're getting a 90% loan over 2 loans on commercial real estate, which you're not going to get without partnering with a program like ours. So it lowers the amount of equity that a potential person wanting to invest in your downtown has to bring to the table. It also lowers the risk to the bank. Bank is going to have half the money at stake, and they're going to have first lien position. We do that on purpose. The types of projects that we know are going to make a downtown vibrant tend to be the types of projects that are harder to bank. A lot of times they're startups. There certainly tend to be in industries that are a little harder for a bank to provide approval on. Restaurants, breweries, retail. I mean, retail is not a guaranteed outcome these days. Hospitality, things like that. If you have a law office in the downtown, is that right, sir?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's great. Brings customers to restaurants and whatnot. But if the only thing that you have in your downtown is attorneys' offices and accounting offices, it's not going to make a very exciting downtown. So you want to blend to those things, and some of those other things are harder to bank. The other thing that's important to note is that our 2 programs are both low-interest programs, especially by today's standards. We lend at 3.5% fixed interest. The state lends at 3% interest. Are you on Main Street? So the state has a 1-point reduction in their program for cities that are in the Main Street program. So the state's money is a 2%. They can lend up to 250,000. We can lend up to 200,000 combined. We can lend up to 450,000. So in that scenario, take it to $1 million project, and we can bring, 400,000 in subordinated debt and a low interest, which makes the bank happy, makes the borrower happy. Historically, both of our programs have always utilized the Downtown Development Authority or some authority as a conduit for lending. The state of Georgia cannot lend money directly to an individual or a corporation without the money flowing through an authority. We're a nonprofit, we can. Historically, we haven't. However, last Tuesday, we just changed our rules with our board of directors to allow us to provide direct lending, but with the caveat that it still comes with a support package from the city and authority that basically shows that it's a project that y'all are behind. You don't have to, if you're only working with our program or someone's only working with our program, it wouldn't require y'all to be involved in a legal capacity in the transaction. But if we want to be able to maintain the city and authority's ability to kind of decide which projects fit and which projects don't. Most projects we see are good projects that any city would want in their downtown, but we still want to allow that ability for y'all to kind of clear things on your end. But that's the revolving loan fund in broad strokes. Do you have any questions on that?
Yeah. Make it clear that we're recommending clients to you.
Yes. I say as long as we've been around, historically, I would say that, maybe 10 years ago, probably 95% of the potential borrowers came to us through folks in y'all's position, folks in Sylvia's position, or something similar. These days, we've been doing this so long, we might have someone reach out to us and say, hey, we want to do a building in downtown Fairburn. Then I say, great, well, let's get on a call with Sylvia and figure out how to make this happen. But still, the traditional method is a potential applicant would originate locally.
What is the credit score?
There is not we don't have set underwriting standards, and that's true for DCA as well. I mean, we do credit underwriting just like
Someone with 5.
Someone would provide us basically the same information that they will provide their bank. We're going to go through the same type of underwriting, but we don't have things that say, the loan to value ratio didn't meet this standard, the debt to income didn't meet this standard, the credit score didn't meet this standard. We're going to look at it holistically before we decide. And we do take things into consideration, like how impactful it's going to be for downtown Fairburn. That doesn't allow us to make, bad loans, but it might help nudge us over if we think, well, this one's a little risky, but it could be a real game changer for a particular downtown.
What's the payback, 10, 15 to 30 years?
It's I'm glad you asked. It's a 10-year term, 15-year amortization. So there's a balloon due at 10. DCA a few years ago changed theirs to a straight 15-year.
Okay.
And it's also important to note, these are the details we get in when we're talking to an applicant for sure. We don't do construction lending. Neither of us, we're just too small. Most of our projects have a construction period. So the way it usually works is, let's take that $500,000 example. We go through underwriting, we provide an approval, we provide a commitment for 40%, and then the bank with our commitment in hand will go and fund the full 90%, knowing that when the project has a certificate of occupancy, we're going to come in and be a takeout of a big chunk of their interim loan, and then whatever's left over is their permanent loan.
Are there restrictions on what they can spend?
Sure. Yes, thank you. I mean, it's pretty much any commercial building downtown. We don't fund single-family residential. We can fund, mixed-use developments that include residential. We've done some multifamily projects. They tend to be, those are a little rare, but we've done some that are entirely residential. It tends to be a retrofit of a historic building or something like that. And it can't be a government use. The DDA, however, can borrow from us if y'all are ever looking at actually being the developer on a particular project. And we've had some great examples of that over the years. And so the DDA can borrow money from us or DCA.
So in order to get around that government situation, you have like I wouldn't call it a straw man, but you'd have the downtown development or whoever step in to be the lead dog on the project.
There's a couple of reasons historically that I've seen that DDAs might take on a redevelopment project. Probably the most common is that for some reason a particular building, or maybe it's even a piece of land, the private sector is just not stepping up. Maybe it's just too far gone. Maybe it's we had we provided us and DCA provided loans for downtown Clarksville years ago when they had 3 of their buildings on their square burned down. A couple years later, the private sector still didn't take up the challenge, so they went in and did it. Another example might be that maybe it's a building, the property that becomes owned by the city. The city is very limited in how they can dispose of real estate. It's a bid process. Development it can be deeded to an authority with an intergovernmental agreement, and then the authority can be very focused on who they want. And then with the goal usually being to get out of it.
Right.
And, eventually, maybe you help, get a building a little more stabilized or even move-in ready, maybe even bring in a tenant with the hopes that in a few years they'll be able to purchase the building from you.
Do you do land acquisition loans, or they have to have site control? How do you?
We have never done it before. We did have that question a number of years ago. It happened to be in Stone Mountain. And in that case, a development authority was interested in utilizing our funding to secure a piece of land that they wanted to target for a grocery store in this case. And so it was control. It didn't happen, but we decided that we would do that. Now, if a private developer wanted to use our program just to buy land or a property and sit on it and hope that it goes up in value, we don't do that.
Right.
But we would do speculation essentially for a DDA because it's a different
Like if they had like an option on a piece of land and they had a whole development project written around that would
Probably we could do that, yep.
Anybody else?
And then I'm glad, so if I understand correctly, everyone here sits on the DDA and the Citywide Development Authority.
That's correct.
Well, that's great, because as I mentioned, we're a CDFI lender, and because of that, there's a program going on right now called SSBCI, stands for State Small Business Credit Initiative. You can learn that if you want to, but you don't need to. So SSBCI, it's 2.0. It was originally a program created as part of the 2010 Small Business Jobs Act. It ran its course in Georgia. It was very successful. We hoped Congress would reappropriate funds, and they didn't until COVID. So as part of the ARPA package, Congress reauthorized SSBCI. It's called 2.0. And Georgia received just shy of $200 million. 60 million of that has been set aside specifically for CDFIs to lend. So for projects that meet Treasury's eligibility requirements, we can, as a CDFI, lend on these projects out of their pot of money, and we can lend up to 1.25 million, and we're also doing that at 3.5% interest.
Question, you said you're a CDFI, so is there any kind of grant component to,
Not from us.
okay,
Yeah.
but you're aware of where those buckets are?
I mean, we try to go for grant opportunities to increase our lending capacity. Yeah, and this program, without getting too in the weeds, is essentially a grant opportunity for us. I was telling Dan just before this, if we make $1 million loan, we get to keep the loan repayments. So it's a way for us to potentially greatly grow our lending capacity. And down the road, I'm hopeful that that'll allow us to greatly increase our maximum loan amount for our downtown revolving loan fund. Pardon me, I'm going to grab my water.
Sure.
The reason I was glad to hear that you are part of the Development Authority as well is that program, we're not restricting the SSBCI program simply to downtown projects. So any eligible project within the city limits can apply. The program is a lot more nuanced than we have time to go into right now, but the simplest thing is to know is that it has to be for projects that are owner-occupied or primarily owner-occupied commercial. If you're at all familiar with how SBA lending works, they basically just copied the SBA. So if it's an existing building, it has to be over 51% owner-occupied. The other uses cannot be residential. If it's new construction, it has to be at least 60% owner-occupied. Same rules apply. You can have commercial tenants, just not residential tenants in those other percentages. And there needs to be a minimum of a one-to-one match from a bank or similar lender. But we've been looking at a lot of our deals, upwards of, if it's 1.25 million or less for our loan, then most of these deals we're working with a bank and doing a 45-45-10 split. We just take the project and we split the debt portion down the middle and a second lien position, 3.5% interest. And a lot of those we're doing for a 20-year amortization.
Just one other question, maybe two. You said clarification, no repair or remodel.
Sure.
Oh, you do that?
Yep.
Okay. So that clearly gives my answer. I thought it was just new construction.
Nope. No, we very rarely do new construction,
So
honestly.
that's all downtown is remodel and repairs.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally we'll do infill construction in a downtown. With the SSBCI, we'll certainly be doing more new construction, and we're doing some with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Everybody okay?
My information's on the back of that, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. For agenda item number 8, I think we have a small adjustment. I'm going to call on our good friend, Mr. Dan McCray, understand, to go over the legal basis for the MOU for discussing item 7, discussion regarding proposed citizens park project. Take it away, Dan.
I'm happy to do it, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you, board members. It's good to see you all again. I'm recently acquainted with this MOU, but it didn't take long to read. It's the shortest one I've ever seen. But you have to watch the moving parts on this. So it works this way. The DDA, in conjunction with the Development Authority of Fulton County, entered into a property tax savings transaction. So that's step one. The developer, because of that, offered to pay $250,000 to the city for the improvement of a public park, not for the acquisition, not for the maintenance, for the improvement of a public park. We have the developer, we have the DDA, we have the city, but we have no park yet. So the missing element on this is the acquisition of the land. The MOU does not specify what park where, but it's clearly a public park. And of course, the MOU is written as being non-binding, so it can be changed. So, I mean, that's essentially the situation now. And I understand there's a presentation coming up involving this, but the board members who were present at the presentation I made earlier will recall that DDA and a citywide authority can't do purely public projects, and a public park is a purely public project on a standalone basis. So that's the current situation, and you've got pieces that aren't connected yet, but when they're connected, it has to flow in a certain way according to the memorandum of agreement. Money goes to city for public park, and then city has some decisions to make at that point. So questions I can answer now.
So it goes back to the city to make sure they can meet those qualifications?
Whether the transaction meets the qualifications or the park does. Park. It would, of course, you would expect the city to be prudent about, first of all, buying or accepting property of any kind, because the property is not always an asset. Sometimes it's a liability. There are expenses connected with it. So there's the initial due diligence and inspection. And then the city is not constrained by this memorandum of understanding as to what park where. So there's that next decision about what to do about the land acquisition. And part of this is budgeting. I mean, there's the maintenance and upkeep and all that the city has to think about.
So when it comes back to this board, the qualification is already met, and we just vote in on them. Fine.
As it stands right now, the DDA has done its part. And what's left are the interactions between the developer, the landowner, and the city. That's not to say that the city or somebody might not ask the DDA to do something else. And if that ask is made, then we would have to screen it to make sure it was consistent with our governmental mission.
Are you saying, Dan, that there's nothing that the city can do with the 250 right now because it would be public to public? You know, the public would be creating a public good. The money couldn't, does it have to be sponsored by someone or some entity outside of the city? Is that what you're saying?
No, the city would have to, what actions the city took would have to be consistent with its governmental mission, and it would have to be good decision-making. So if somebody were to give the city, offer to give the city some land, the city might say, no, that's not a good thing for the city to do. Or the city might say, that's good land. If only we had $250,000 to improve it, maybe we'll put the two together and have a project and have a deal.
So it'd be like a public-private partnership kind of a thing?
It kind of already is with the source of the money. And then you have the acquisition of the land and the creation of the public park, which would have to be owned by the city or by some other agency like a recreation authority if the city has one.
Okay. Questions?
If you don't have more questions now, I predict there will be more questions later.
Oh, I'm a little bit in a fog now. We'll talk offline because
Yes, sir.
I need to be able to frame it in terms of how that money can be applied judiciously, legally?
As it stands now, the money has to go to the city, and the money has to be spent on the improvement of a park.
Existing, new park,
Does not specify. It does the MOU does use the word acquisition, which implies that the land has not been acquired yet, but there are not a lot of strings tied to it.
I was around when we did this deal, and I thought that it could be used to enhance, like, an existing park with no issues whatsoever. I didn't know there were strings.
Well, again, honestly, it's one page long and 5 paragraphs long, and the paragraphs are a sentence apiece, so there's not much to work with.
Right.
But it does use for the purpose of constructing and landscaping a park is what the city would use the money for.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the word acquisition in here somewhere. Yep. The understanding is that the city would be responsible for site selection, which implies the site hasn't been selected, acquisition, which implies the site has not been bought, construction, operation, and maintenance. So this implies that it's not an existing park.
Right. Okay. Okay.
It's just an implication.
Thank you.
Best I can do with what I got to work.
I hear you. See?
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, board members.
Thanks, Dan.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good. Dan, if you might, I just wanted clarity around, you mentioned that the agreement is non-binding. Does that imply that it is subject to renegotiation, or that the terms thereof could be amended, changed, revised if the city and other parties so desired?
I'll give you an unequivocal yes to that. Not often you get that from a lawyer.
Write that down. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. All righty. I guess now we move on to the discussion regarding the proposed Citizens Park project. Sir?
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Brian Bower. I'm the owner of Studio Cigar Lounge and S&B Group Development, which is the owner of the property and land of that particular area. This project have been in the works for 3 years. It was part of some of the discussions that we've had with the city, as well as some of the council that's here. Also, I took it upon myself and invested in a team, which you will be hearing from, to establish this project, as well as you will hear from the author of the memorandum of understanding.
Okay.
So they got to bring some clarity. But also, first of all, before I get into it, I really like to thank the city officials, Sylvia, as well as Tony, for the work you've done. It's been a pleasure doing business in Fairburn. We service on the average of 1,200 people a week at Studio Cigar Lounge, especially on the weekends, and we bring a lot of attention to that particular area. So much as though, we're trying to establish some additional parking. So, but this project, dealing with a park, when I first purchased, and you look over the back and you just see a clogged up water with a bunch of trash in it 3 years ago. However, in the last 7 days, thanks to the city and corporation, as well, it's the property in the rear of me is owned by 5 businesses in that particular area. It's an association, and we are responsible for that property, but mainly the retention pond. And the property in question, we will not be asking the city to take no responsibility for the retention pond. That is on us. However, the area is what we want to stay focused on. To lead the discussion with the plan that relate to the project manager is Jamie, Christy, Jamie and Christy, as well as Sophie, and their names are printed, and Egan will present. And throughout some of Jamie's presentation, we also have the mysterious author of the MOU.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I know it's kind of running a little bit late. We're not going to be before you too long. Do we have the presentation? We ready to go? Awesome. Okay. I'm Jamie Hutchison. I am a developer as well as a finance broker in Metro Atlanta area for 22 years. When I met Brian and went over there to the cigar bar, we was doing other business and development, and I seen this retention pond with all of these, everything in it, but it was a beautiful view, and Brian and his team vision of taking this retention pond and turn it into a citizen park is totally astonishing. In the development arena, usually retention ponds is what we see in our subdivisions and other public area. No one want to touch it. But Brian had a vision. He got a team together and be able to show a beautiful park for the citizens of Fairburn. And Christiana, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christiana Hibbler. I am an environmentalist and a biophilic designer, and I am the project manager over this project. I was first introduced to this project about a year ago. When I first seen the status condition of the pond, I noticed that it was very concerning in terms of the extreme erosion, the overgrowth of foliage around the pond and in the pond, furniture dumping and trash in the pond itself, and the stoppage of the drainage due to a beaver clogging. So that was very concerning for not only towards the environment, but also towards the community itself, since the pond is a very large aspect of the community and impactful of it. So when Brian came to me with the idea of turning this pond, not only revitalizing it and making it up to code and look better, he also came up with the idea of creating it into a park for the citizens of Fairburn, which I believe is very important because, one, there's no parks in the around area of that place, which is on Fairburn, I believe Fairburn Road. Harris Road. So here's the summary of the park. We're going to mainly just, well, we already have started the tree clearing and the trash removal and the unplugging of the beaver dam that has clogged up the pond.
Let's go to the next slide. Okay, we're going to go over the leads that is working on the project, which is myself as a developer. Christiana is in the environmental portion of it. And then we have Miss Sophie. We can go to the next, you can click it. There you go. Here's Mr. Bryant, beautiful picture. And that's Christiana and her experience with environmental to make sure that the erosion, the geese, because now that the pond has been cleared out, the geese have came back to that area. And we have a picture of that as well. And that's myself on the development side, and Miss Sophie, she'll be speaking shortly. And then our partners. We do have South City partner, and we have Sean here. Sean is a partner with the apartment building that is directly across on the side of the potential citizen park, which these residents will be able to utilize this park. Go to the next one. And then we also have Mr. Rod Pitts, that is also a supporter of the project. In the area here you see on the map, you'll be able to see the red dot, which is the part where the cigar bar lies. All around it, on the right side, you'd be able to see the residence, which is a lot of foot traffic in this area that walks down Harris Road, past the cigar bar, passing the park area. So it's a lot of foot traffic. That brown area, that's the development over in South Fulton. That's going to be townhomes development starting in the 300,000. That part will be their backyard.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. It's a cigar lounge.
Cigar lounge, I'm sorry. Did I say
Thank you
bar?
very much, sir. I understand.
Cigar lounge. Thank you, thank you. I don't be going over there to the bar. But this next slide is indicating all the existing residential homes, apartment buildings, and new developments that's in the area, which is within anywhere from 500 yards to a half a mile of the Citizen Park. These are our Property Owners Association, which I'm very, very proud of them as association. With the current status of the park, with the pond being clogged by beaver, it went up over the water level. Trash, garbage, everything flows into it. They came together. They put up close to $30,000 less than about 7 to 10 days ago. Cash money. Christiana and I met the team out there, and they cleaned this pond up. So they got all the trash out. They got the beaver dam corrected. They did the leveling. They unplugged some trees because trees has fallen into the park as well. And they did that out of their pocket to showing good effort that they want this Citizen Park. We can click to the next one. With the stormwater of the pond and the maintenance, like Mr. Bryant was saying earlier, that responsibility going to stay on the POAs. But there's another portion to the park that we're going to do the walking trail that goes around the pond. We will do a bridge over to connect the two. We are going to do water elements that will be lighted up, waterfalls. Very nice, from the apartment building to the cigar lounge, and as well as all the passerbys. They'll be able to really enjoy that park. They can come down into the park, walk on the trail, run on the trail, bring the kids out. We are going to have a green space on the end for summertime, springtime, for entertainment for the community. Next one. This is a slide just showing that it was the trash, the lack of maintenance, the drainage, the erosion, and then the last one is showing the safety for the citizen, because that sidewalk, it goes constantly. We was out there for hours for the last year and a half, and it's a walking trail for the citizens of Fairburn. And this is also, if you see that last slide on the left-hand side, you see all the green trees are beautiful, but that was clogging the retention pond. Go to the next one. Now, here we are now in March 2024. They have cleared, if you look at your slides, at the second in the middle, you can see that all of the overgrowth of trees have been removed. You can see the cigar lounge, the back of it as well. And then my favorite slide is the one to the right with the little geese that came back. Before it was so clogged and had so much going on, the animals really couldn't come back to the park. So they have returned now that we have doing the cleaning, and we should have it all cleaned up by the end of this week, right? It should be complete. So the next step with the cleanup is done, we going into the beautification. That's the fun part, is making it beautiful. This park is not an acquisition on it. I know the gentleman said with MOU, it's not an acquisition. There is no other monies involved except for the beautification. And it's going to be upgrading the park. And that's going to be the scope of work. So we'll be doing a walking trail that goes around it's a circumference of the park. We will be putting in the water elements, 3 water fountains with lights that gonna add to the aesthetics of the entire park. We will make sure we're gonna be putting in trash cans, make sure our signage is there, no swimming, no fishing, to keep everybody safe. And we also have, go to the next slide, the Walk of Fame, which is a very good concept, and I know the city of Fairburn, with your film festivals and everything in the film industry that's going on in this area, Mr. Bryant came up with the concept of a Walk of Fame for Citizen Park, where we have be recognizing different individuals in the film industry, different celebrities that we have already been talking with, in order to pull the community together, not just for the film and industry area, but also for the entire citizens of that area, to give them something to be proud of. That corridor is very busy. You got your trucking right across from it. It's a lot going on. So living in those areas, for a mother to be able to take her child for a nice walk in the park is good, because you can't walk on the street. It's a very busy area. So this is the graph of the park. We will be planting trees, benches, walkway. We will be doing a bridge across to connect the park. And then on the right-hand side, it will be green space for entertainment, picnics, whatever people may want to do outside, which is very important in our society, is to get outside and get in an environment, especially with our younger citizen, and get off the phone and get out in front of the TV. So if you have a park in the area, people can walk to this park. Everyone don't have to jump in a car to come to the citizen park. This is kind of a picture of what we're expecting for it to look like once it's finished and completed. We do have professional vendors. In fact, one of our vendors is here tonight that's going to be doing the landscaping. I appreciate you coming, Tyrese. We did search for the best vendor we can, and he is local to the Fairburn area. We want to keep the dollars within the city of Fairburn. And they will be doing the aesthetics on the park. They will be doing the landscaping, making sure everything have that curb appeal that is needed on Harris Road. Now, this is our project cost. Brian, did you want me to go through all this, or does Sean need to come up at this point, or is we good? Okay. Absolutely. Well, this is the project cost, and being a developer in this is an easy project. It's not that expensive. Usually it's in the millions when you start doing green space. But this is the project cost. Like I said earlier, the association, the property association, they put their dollars in. They put close to $30,000 in within 7 days to clean that park. So now all we have to do is go in with the beautification. There is going to be associated maintenance costs. That cost is going to be annually around $15,000 to $16,000 annually. One of our other partners, Ms. Sophie, will talk on that, because we'll be doing fundraisers, donations, those type of things, in order to make sure that the park is maintained. And whatever responsibility, if there is any responsibility from the city of Fairburn, we hope that you'll be able to support on that if needed. This is our scope of work in our timeline. Now that the park is already cleared out, we have probably about 3 months to get the beautification done. We are in hopes when they finish up this week that we can go in quickly with the beautification, because we don't want erosion again now that we're in the spring and all the rain and the water. We need to get the grass down and get everything beautified. Did anyone have any questions or concerns? Yeah, and then any questions for me or Christiana? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm for it, Tony can work out the legal end of it. But I do have some concerns that I want to just get addressed.
Yes, sir.
You know, there's prior to doing this, people that have already bought those homes and apartments and stuff in there. And it's not going to be any fencing.
No, it's not gonna
Okay.
be fenced.
How did you guys look into the safety of it? Because there's a lot of kids live there. There's a family with kids. How did you look at that?
Well, after talking, well, a couple things. The way it's designed, you probably have a slope that is a good 7 feet before you even get to the water.
Yeah, but what's gonna happen, because we live on a golf course, kids gonna use that for playing.
Yeah,
They're gonna be out there, all kinds of activities, and they're not gonna be with parents or elderly. So how that safety factor, protecting those kids from playing, and you know, when kids get together, they do crazy stuff. How was that looked into?
yes, sir. We did discuss that with the city as far as the fencing and retention pond. It's not required of fence. We did talk about the liability, where will the liability lies in case somebody do flip and roll into the pond. So with that liability in having your signage should be enough to know that you shouldn't be swimming, fishing into the pond.
How deep is it gonna be?
The deepest is about 6 feet, and that's gonna be in the center. Your edges is natural, so you're talking about probably a feet.
And is there a water source into there, or is that runoff?
That is runoff from rainwater, stormwater.
So
we
you
don't-
got
we
a
haven't added any
7-year-old,
water to it.
8-year-old can't read. They out there playing. Those
Sorry,
signs,
say that
you
again.
got a 6, 7-year-old can't read those instructions. Those signs mean nothing to him.
You're exactly right. The cover that aspect of it, you know, upon your concern, we definitely get with Lester, with the city, as well as to ensure that those high-traffic areas are secured, where it will not be an issue.
That's my only concern. I'm for the project.
So, the POA established there is gonna pay the annual maintenance and upkeep? I mean, it wouldn't fall back on the city, or,
The POA, as well as our fundraising efforts, will cover that expense.
and exactly how large is this? I mean, I kinda got a little bit of how much acreage is it?
The total acreage of the pond, I think, is 1.38.
Acres?
So will that water level rise and fall?
It has a drain on it. I don't think we have that picture.
I saw
but
the
it's a drainage. You know how you see the big concrete drainage? When it get to a certain footage, if we have a lot of rain, it's gonna automatically spill off itself.
Will it ever drain completely?
If we wanted to, we can control the drainage on it. We are installing a lever. If we need to bring it all the way down, if we have some massive storm, we can control that. When they started cleaning it out the other week, it took less than 24 hours. It went all the way down to like 3 to 4 feet.
And if I could skip back to Dan, this is a permitted use of the funds that we got from South City.
Have the funds been paid by South City to the DDA?
I think that's the 250, right?
I was wondering that when I heard the treasurer.
Yeah.
That's inconsistent with the MOU already. So, excuse me, please. So if the funds have been paid to the DDA, that's already inconsistent with the MOU. And in terms of the DDA using those funds for maintenance, the grant, I'll call it a grant, was for the purposes of improvement, not maintaining. So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And there's also the issue of if this land is owned by a property owners association and not by the city and not by the DDA, it'd be proper for the city, of course, to own a public park, but not for the DDA, then we couldn't even take title to it. And if we expended funds to improve or pay the maintenance on privately owned property, that looks like a violation of the constitutional prohibition of the public sector conferring a gift or gratuity on the private sector. If you start from the beginning with something like that, often there's a way to structure things so you come out with the result that you want. But
You're saying we're midstream now?
contrary to the MOU, for a purpose that isn't authorized by the DDA, is probably not a good way to start with that.
Okay.
I think you're making a misunderstanding because of the fact, I think you're making a misunderstanding in your interpretation. The initial $250,000 that's going to be requested is for the purchase of the items, the bench, the beautification aspect of the park. So those funds were already be exhausted compared to the maintenance area. That's for the fundraising aspect.
So let me say this at this point. It seems like there needs to be a little bit of shakeout.
Well, here is the author of the memorandum of understanding.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Okay, let's,
So he's a writer.
Mr. Phillips, excuse me. The chair recognizes
So-
Mr. Phillips.
So a couple of things. I think we need to defer to Dan McCray for legal issues. He's the attorney, and so let him clarify that. I didn't go to law school, so I'll rely on Dan for that. But there was a question by Mr. Knight and one of the other board members as it relates to fencing and the water levels in the pond. The pond behind the Studio Cigar Lounge is in essence a stormwater management facility. That's really what it is. And what does that mean? When it rains, the water's got to go somewhere. So we have storm drains. Those storm drains typically feed into some type of pond, right? In this instance, there are two basic types of ponds. Some are detention ponds, and then you have retention ponds. The primary difference is detention ponds are primarily designed for the water to filter into the pond and drain out, typically over 48 to 72 hours after a rain event. And so detention ponds don't typically have a lot of water in them because it's designed for the water to naturally flow into the surrounding landscape. Retention ponds kind of look like a small lake. They retain water. They're designed to hold water at a certain level. As we have this discussion tonight, I'm not sure which one this is. I don't know if it's a detention pond or retention pond. As to your question is it ever going to drain completely? That depends on how it's designed. You can design them so that they drain completely, and you can design them so that they hold water. And sometimes developers do that as a desirable feature, for instance, in a subdivision. People like water features, right? And so if you got to have a drainage structure, some may choose to say, hey, we want a retention pond. Now, as it relates to the fencing, we'll have to go back and check the ordinance. There is some language that I don't have in front of me as it relates to that. I think your question about the safety issue is a very valid one, particularly when we create an amenity that is designed to draw people to it, right? And I, like you, think about children. I've got 4 of my own, and they don't always do what I ask them. So I understand your point. I think those are things we can flesh out as we move forward. The last thing I would add before letting them conclude, because I have a few more things I might want to share with you, is one of the reasons I asked a question earlier to the attorney as to whether or not this agreement it's non-binding, it can be revisited. I'm not sure as presently constructed that it's the best vehicle for what the stakeholders are trying to do. And so if it's not, that might be a consideration to say, well, we have an idea here, but the current vehicle may not fit what we're trying to do. And Dan, please correct me if I get on shaky ground legally here. Okay. And so that's something I would tell everyone to bear in mind, that we may need some further discussion to make sure that we've got the right vehicle that captures the stakeholders' intentions and gets us to the outcome everybody's trying to get to.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And the title's not going to change. The title, the people who own the property, that's not going to change.
Well, here's the intent of the people who own the property is once the park get beautified and up in maintenance, then we enter into agreement, with the city as relate to becoming public and allowing that aspect of it. That's what the intent have always been since we started the discussions.
So that brings the city into the liability side. So I think you need to get together and talk.
Right.
Well, I don't think
Talk this
that,
together over before we commit to
Before
something.
we,
Even though it's a beautiful idea,
right.
I like
there's some.
There's a little more
doors
work
need to be closed.
required. Yeah. but I'd like to hear from South City Partners also.
Hey, good evening.
How you doing?
Hey, great. Good seeing y'all.
You too.
It's been a minute. So I'm with South City Partners. We develop Solstice, the Dillon on Harris Road, and then also Oslo currently. When we entered into this MOU, what was that, 6 months ago, 8 months ago or so, we were working through the Development Authority, obviously, to do a 10-year bonds for title tax abatement program. And this was part of the exchange. And so this actually started with conversations with Brian, trying to figure out how we can go about creating a park back there, because we think it would benefit the community. All of our residents would love it. I think they've done an amazing job creating a new standard for retail in the city of Fairburn. Clearly, they've created a great product and will continue to provide positive amenities for the city. And so when we created this MOU, because of the pace that we were going at, we had to leave it a little bit open-ended. And, I know that this park, it's still not finalized. So, the pace that we were going, we had to leave it a little bit open. But we intended for these funds to be used towards this park. This Citizens Park behind the Cigar Lounge is exactly what we intended for that $250,000 to go towards. So if we need to amend the MOU or however that would go about, I know we've already submitted the funds and Development Authority has them. We're open to modifying that however we need to. But just.
Okay, I would just say that Dan's our man. Get him in the mix.
Well, let me know what I need to do as South City, and we're here to help, and we'd love to see the park happen.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great.
All right.
So I think in closing, thank you. Only thing that I would request is that this body, if you would, Mr. Chair, entertain a motion to support it with the conditions that the city and legal, as well as the author, could amend the MOU to support this idea. We've been working extremely hard on it. But we would definitely want to know, have some sense, because our project is time sensitive due to the nature of the weather going into the summer, as well as the pricing that we have for the subs to maintain that pricing. So if you could, I would ask the chair and the committee to entertain it tonight.
I will kick it over to Dan. Is there something, a motion that we could craft to support the effort of the park without getting our feet or all the way wet,
A good lawyer would always ask this question: what do you want the result to be? So if we can figure out what the result is that the city and the DDA wants, I'll figure out a way to get us there. It may take some work from what I'm hearing, but I think tonight the most you could do is to adopt a resolution empowering the chair in consultation with council and the city manager to develop a structure for this transaction and come back with recommended documentation for consideration by the DDA.
You put me in the brain freeze. I want to be comfortable that the city administration and the city mayor and city council are also on board with this, since I guess we're kind of the tip of the spear. I want to know that.
If I could add a little additional context for the
Sure.
city's behalf. So let me start with this. Typically, I'm not here, so it's good to see all of you. And the reason I'm typically not here is because we have such an outstanding economic development director that has our complete confidence, both of myself and the mayor and council. So I want to thank Sylvia for all the hard work she does. Secondly, I can tell you that Brian Beware is a key business owner in the city of Fairburn. He's been a great partner with the city. Ever since I've been in this position, we've done projects together. He's hosted events there for the city. He has made a significant positive difference since his business has been on highway, or just off of Highway 74. I will also tell you the South City Partners, just based on what he shared with you, the Solstice, the Dillon, the Oslo, they have also been key stakeholders. So from the city's perspective, these are folks that we've done a lot of good work with, who've done a lot of good projects in the city of Fairburn, and so we certainly acknowledge that. I will also tell you that there are not enough parks on Highway 74. Absolutely. In fact, there are no parks on Highway 74. I will also share with you that we are currently in the final stages of about a 9 or 10 month parks master planning process that is going to provide a park system framework for the city that anticipates moving forward in a number of different ways to ensure that there's park access all over the city, including Highway 74. Let's talk for a moment about Highway 74. It is a growing primary commercial thoroughfare to the city. I think everybody knows that. I would tell you that development prospects in that area are probably higher than they've ever been. Sylvia's phone rings off the hook. Denise Brookins, our planning and zoning director, her phone rings off the hook. There are a lot of good things coming to Highway 74, and we're excited about that. And so adding to that is always a positive. Some of the major initiatives that are shortly to come to fruition is the Georgia Department of Transportation is about to enter into a $90 million interchange revision at Interstate 85 and Highway 74. That project goes out to bid later this summer. It will probably start work in FY25. I will tell you that Fayette County recently received a project to have the U.S. National Soccer Facility located about 15 minutes from Fairburn. That will draw all manner of businesses to the area. There's a lot of exciting things going on in that corridor. The last thing I will share with you is that by definition, the nature of the beast with city managers is we like details. And due diligence is my obligation as a city administrator. The mayor and city council appointed me, have every expectation that we are thoroughly looking at every opportunity and dotting every I and crossing every T, and I'm kind of wired that way anyway. I think this is a wonderful project that has a great concept to it. I think there's some more detailed work that needs to happen. And so, yes, we need a park on Highway 74. Yes, these are valued stakeholders that we've done good work with before, but we need to make sure that we craft this in such a way that it fits what everyone is wanting to see happen out of this project. And I think Dan has made it clear that this vehicle may not, as presently written, be exactly what we need. And as mentioned previously, there may need to be a little more work. I don't know that that takes an extreme amount of time. Right. But it's necessary work. We need to get the details right, because before I can give a full-throated recommendation, I have to know the details. I have to know what, that final outcome is going to be, because that's the expectation and the responsibility that I have. So with that said, is this a great idea? It absolutely is. Are these great folks to work with, both South City Partners and Brian Beware? Without hesitation, I would tell you that. But we need to make sure that we structure this in a way so that we can come back and give you a responsible, researched, due diligent recommendation.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Has the question, Mr. Arlen?
Okay. Todd? See. Mr. Ireland, are you with us? Excuse me.
Mr. Ireland, please unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, we heard him earlier.
And also Chris Pike, what was the note?
Is there a point of information, a motion was already made and passed to support this park permit last year. So that's what.
Mr. Allen's, I guess, typed into the chat that his recollection is that a motion was made and passed in support of this specific project last year. We can certainly find that in the, any of that would be in the city's records, minutes.
So we'll pull that, yeah.
That may have been the MOU
He's not,
that was approved, the one that we're currently discussing.
yeah, approval of
I
the
be-
memorandum.
I believe it was, yeah, because I don't think that we had a specific site in mind at the time that,
Right, Sean, yeah.
We were talking with
Sean
South City.
presented the memorandum of agreement and the service officers for the tax, Mr. Sean Roscoe presented in the tax abatement, the memorandum of agreement, as well as the service officer agreement for the 20% at the new apartment complex.
That's good background to have. As the chair and the city manager said, the intention is one thing, what the contract says is another, and the facts are another. There are people who think you write a contract and put it in a desk, and 10 years later, it's all the same. It's not. It changes overnight. One thing that has already happened that's inconsistent with this MOU is that money has been funded to the DDA, not the city. So that's fact. Another thing that we have to consider is that this is that the MOU contemplates this being a public park. If it doesn't come into public ownership, it's not a public park. Other constraints are that the DDA's governmental mission does not include standalone public parks, and that neither the city nor the DDA can confer a gift or gratuity on the private sector. So this is like, a pinball game or something like that. We've got to get the ball to where we want it to go, but we've got to get around these flippers in order to get it there. And I'm not sure that I completely understand what the result is. If this is, for one solution might have been for the Property Owners Association and the developer to make a private sector deal between private parties, which they could do. They don't have these constraints like we do. But the fact that the money's already been paid to the DDA and the MOU's already been signed might get in the way of that. But again, if I have a clear understanding of what the end result should be, and it sounds like the end result should be that the funds would be contributed towards, let's call it the maintenance of a privately owned piece of recreation land, which might need a restrictive covenant or something to make sure it stays that way, then we can work towards that. But I think, as has been diplomatically said, the MOU as it's written now doesn't do the job, so it's got to be revisited.
I'd like to call Mr. Boulware back for a question. Sir, what exactly, what's your drop dead date on this letter of support from our entity?
Well, like I stated earlier, we wanted either support for the project from this body. Our intentions, and at the time where the developer had the $250,000 to donate for the project, we were not in the same place and ready for it because we had to organize all the owners, talk to the city, get a team together, because believe it or not, I had to pay them. I paid them.
Right.
And they've been doing a lot of work towards this project. So I've invested in the project with the understanding that, we're going to work with the city to make this a park for the citizens of Fairburn. Only stipulation that I do understand, Tony, that the city will not accept a retention pond.
Right,
And that,
okay.
But as it relate to everything else around it, it would not be a problem.
We can't make any kind of, financial support decision, but we can approve like your concept. We can support the concept.
Well, here's my question to the attorney as well as to the chair. If the author of the memorandum of understanding stated before this body that the intent of the proceeds were for this park and the conditions.
Excuse me, Chair, what we could do is a letter of support.
letter of support without making a financial commitment to the project. Okay, it's something that we as a development authority would like to see.
Well, that's not why I came.
Well, the reason why I said a letter of support, because technically, based upon what Dan said, we cannot commit those funds. So the Development Authority can do a letter of support. Am I right?
We can't commit the funds with the MOU as presently.
Exactly.
Written, right.
So
The next opportunity for us to come back to the Development Authority with a revised agreement would be the
That's right.
April 24th meeting. That would give us approximately 30 days to work with Dan, work with Brian, to talk to South City Partners, and to work with the city's needs to hopefully craft a revised vehicle that may meet all of those goals. Now, that sounds like a lot of,
but I would accept that
do.
motion. That,
Pardon?
that would accept that motion.
so Dan says he
For
thinks
them
it's
to
feasible.
work on that project. That
Oh, they'll be working when we leave here.
Because in that way, I know that, that this have not been in vain.
And so
Yeah.
if you table the issue until your next meeting in April 24th, then it would be the charge for staff and our stakeholders to convene discussions to see what is the best legal method and financial outcome to achieve the goal that we're all trying to get to.
So we'll just table it and refer it to staff to flush out all the details.
Okay.
Okay, can I have a motion to, oh, I'm sorry.
I want to just say, the project and what you put forth,
Yes, sir.
I love it. I think we all do. But we just had to close those little doors, those loose ends, make sure it worked legally and safely. There's not a problem that's there. So even if 30 days, if we had to get back sooner, you can call a special meeting, right?
Yes, sir.
You know, if you guys get together and Dan is okay, just call a special meeting, because it's something that would beautify the whole area and benefit. But the safety issues and closing the door and make sure we use the funds right, that's just gonna need to be worked out. And I don't think that's hard to do if you guys get together right away and soon work on it.
I really appreciate the support of everyone, and I appreciate that review, and I look forward to when that removes from the table during the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bower, for your time.
And also, Sophie, it'll be, yeah.
Okay, so, really quickly, we're, of course, depending on the $250,000, but as you can tell, the project is more than $250,000. So I've worked with the city of Fairburn before, my agency, Vivo 360, and with a taste of Fairburn. And Sylvia had us walking door to door, going to business owners to get support for that particular project. So we have the experience and the know-how to do that. You know, in addition to that, we know that that park is going to be wonderful, especially with the Hall of, Walk of Fame. We already have famous stars and business owners like the Chick-fil-A, the Kathy chairperson, interested, willing, and able to also be a part and a partner in this. So our job is, yes, we're dependent on the $250,000, but it's much more than that, and we have the great team to make sure that we can make it happen. But sooner, the better.
Thank you.
All right.
Very good. Can I have a motion to table the discussion regarding the proposed Citizens Park project till the next meeting?
I would like to put in there, though, if it require an earlier meeting, we meet, sooner the better, get it over with. Is that possible?
I don't know if you got to put it in the motion, because if they get to the point where it requires action, we do have the power to call the special
So
meeting.
as a manager, I like to under-promise and over-deliver. We need 30 days.
Okay.
If it gets done sooner, I'll be the first to let you know, but I've got to get drafts from legal documents. I got to talk to Brian again and talk to South City Partners, and, I'm not sure. Dan doesn't think it'll take that long, so maybe we're done within 30 days. I probably got to pull in my city attorney as well, and And so I don't want to overcommit. 30 days, I think, is feasible, and we could come back. If it's happened sooner than that, and Silvio can convene a special call meeting, absolutely, Mr. Knight, we would do that.
Okay.
Okay. Back to the motion. Can I have a motion to table the discussion regarding proposed Citizens Park project until our next meeting, and we will refer it to staff in the meantime?
A motion that we table the discussion regarding the proposed Citizen Park project until our next meeting.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, it passes. We'll take it up at the next meeting. Item 7, Ms. Abernathy, item 8, I'm sorry. Is there a real estate?
Real estate executives, we need to go into executive session, yes. For the real estate acquisition. Yep.
We have to have a vote.
There would need to be a motion to go into executive session stating the exempt purpose, which is to consider the acquisition, disposition, or leasing of real estate, something like that. It would have to be voted on.
Okay.
So I have a question. This is my first meeting. Are they all this interesting?
How are you? Good, good. How are you?
Hey, man.
Hey, James, how you doing? Right. Right.
How you doing?
Thank you. I really do like your idea. I really do like it. Don't you have a set?
Right. Yeah, here's your view.
Right, how you doing, man? Good to see you, man.
This is the address that I got for.
Hey, good to see you again.
How you doing? Where exactly are you all located?
We're located behind the Starbucks.
Are you near the?
74.
Renaissance.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna stop by.
Y'all open to that?
Right.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, can we, at this point, discuss what that motion